The rain had unstopped since last night, the night everyone kept calling the happiest day of our lives. I woke up to an unnerving silence. The space beside me in the bed was cold, empty. My eyes landed on the dresser. Her wedding bangles were there, glistening under the dim morning light, laid next to a single, folded note. My heart started to pound. With trembling hands, I picked it up. "You're a good man, Arif, but I was never yours." At first, I laughed. It had to be a joke, right? One of her silly, elaborate pranks. We just gotten married. This was impossible. I called her name, expecting her to jump out from behind a door, laughing at my panicked face. But the only reply was the sound of the rain against the window pane. I walked over to the wardrobe, my stomach twisting into a knot. I pulled the doors open. Her side was empty. All her clothes gone. And in that moment, the rain, the silence, the note, it all crashed down on me. She was really gone. The first day was a blur of confusion and denial. By noon, her phone was switched off. I called her family, her friends, anyone I could think of. They were all silent. They claimed they didn't know anything, their voices laced with an awkward pity I couldn't stand. Days turned into a hollow routine of waiting. I'd check my phone every few seconds, hoping, praying for a sign. 3 days later, it came. A message from an unknown number. Just a few words. "Don't look for me. I'm safe. I'm sorry." I stared at that message until the letters blurred and my eyes burned. The relief of knowing she was safe was immediately crushed by the weight of her apology. Sorry for what? For leaving? For shattering my world? I typed back, my fingers clumsy with a mix of anger and desperation. "Who are you now?" Her reply came 10 minutes later, a lifetime in which I held my breath. A stranger who found the courage to stop pretending. The words hit me harder than her absence ever could. A stranger. That's what she was now. And that's when a painful realization began to settle in my bones. Love for me had always been a mirror, not a window. I hadn't been looking at her. I'd been looking at a reflection of what I wanted her to be. I was in love with the image I had created, not the person standing right in front of me. She hadn't just left me. She had shattered the mirror, forcing me to finally see the truth. The next 6 months were a slow, arduous journey of rebuilding. The sharp edges of pain began to dull, replaced by a quiet, lingering ache. I stopped expecting answers, stopped waiting for closure. I accepted that some chapters in life just end abruptly, without a neat conclusion. I poured myself into work, traveling to distract myself from the ghost of her memory that haunted our home. Then, one day, in a small, sun-drenched coastal town, I saw her. It was so unexpected. It felt like a dream. She was standing by the pier, selling handmade jewelry from a small wooden stall. There was no makeup, no fancy clothes, no pretense. It was just her, barefoot, a genuine, unburdened smile on her face. A smile I realized I had never truly seen before. Our eyes met across the crowded walkway. The world around us seemed to fade away. For a long, suspended moment, neither of us spoke. We were two ghosts from a past life caught in the present. She finally broke the silence, her voice a soft whisper carried by the sea breeze. "I wasn't running from you, Arif. I was running to myself." In that moment, a wave of conflicting emotions washed over me. I didn't know whether to cry from the pain of what I'd lost or smile for the peace she had clearly found. So, I did neither. I just managed to say, my voice steadier than I expected, "I hope you found what you were looking for." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears as she nodded slowly. "I did," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "But I lost the only person who deserved to see it." With those words, she turned, walking back toward the waves, toward her new life. And this time, I didn't follow. I just stood there, watching until she became a silhouette against the sparkling water. That night, I sat on the beach and watched the sea swallow the sun, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I finally understood. Some love stories aren't epic tragedies or fairy tale romances. They're just unfinished. Like the rain that never seems to stop, or letters that are written but never sent. And I realize that's okay. Because maybe the ultimate purpose of love isn't to last forever. Maybe its true purpose is to teach you how to let go without breaking completely. She called me a stranger. But maybe that's what love does sometimes. It turns us into strangers who just happen to remember each other all too well. Thank you for listening to this story with me. If it moved you, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel for more stories that explore the heart. Take care. 5 years had passed since the morning she disappeared. Since that single note on the dresser changed everything I believed about love, truth, and myself. Life moved on quietly, stubbornly. I worked, I traveled, I smiled when it was expected, but every time it rained, my chest grew heavy. Because rain always sounded like her goodbye. The sound of her walking out of my life, leaving only a deafening silence and the scent of petrichor. I learned to live with the ghost of her memory, a constant, silent companion in my empty house. People would ask if I was okay, and I'd nod, a practiced, hollow gesture. How do you explain that a part of you is perpetually caught in a storm that no one else can see? The world kept spinning, seasons changed, but in my heart, it was always that cold, damp morning. I'd find myself staring at strangers on the street, half expecting to see her face in the crowd. A sudden, miraculous return, but she was gone. Gone like a dream you can't quite hold on to upon waking. And with her, she took the man I used to be, the one who believed in forever, in promises whispered under the moonlight. In his place was someone else, a man who understood the fragility of happiness all too well. It was a Sunday evening, the kind that feels heavy with the coming week, when the letter arrived. It was out of place amongst the bills and junk mail. A simple, cream-colored envelope, slightly weathered, as if it had traveled a long way. There was no sender's name, no return address. It's just my name and address on the front. I almost tossed it aside, thinking it was a mistake. But then I turned it over. On the back, written in faded blue ink, was a single word that stopped my heart. Stranger. My hands trembled as I tore it open, the sound of ripping paper like a crack of thunder in the quiet room. Inside was a photograph. The sea stretching out endless and gray under a bruised, stormy sky. It was beautiful and desolate all at once. And beneath it, her handwriting. The same delicate, looping script I'd only seen once before on that cruel note she left behind. If this reaches you, it began, it means the tide has carried my truth back home. I had to sit down. The floor suddenly feeling more stable than my own legs. Her words weren't an explanation, not in the way I had craved for 5 long years. They were a confession, a whisper from a ghost. I didn't leave to hurt you. I left because I was dying inside, not in my body, but in the life we built on silence. Silence. It was true. We had loved each other in a quiet, unspoken way. But looking back, it was a love filled with gaps, with questions I was too afraid to ask. You gave me love, she wrote, but I couldn't give you honesty. I'm sorry. The apology felt both like a balm and a fresh wound. Sorry for what? For leaving? For the lies. For the person she never was. Her letter continued, each sentence a small piece of a puzzle I never knew existed. You once asked who I was. I think I finally know. And then, at the bottom, a name I hadn't dared to speak aloud in years. Neha. Neha, the woman who vanished with the rain, now wrote as if she were a part of it. A force of nature I could never hope to contain. A few weeks after the letter arrived, I found myself driving. I didn't have a plan, just a destination. The small coastal town where I'd last seen her, where we had shared our first and last day as husband and wife. The salt in the air felt familiar, a painful nostalgia. I walked down to the pier, half expecting to see her there, selling her handmade jewelry from that little stall. But the stall was gone, replaced by a new one selling cheap souvenirs. I asked a few of the locals, weathered fishermen and shop owners. They remembered her, the quiet, artistic woman with sad eyes. She'd moved inland, they said, a couple of years back, teaching art at a small school for children. The school was a quaint, sun-drenched building at the edge of the town. Children's laughter echoed from the playground. I approached the gatekeeper, an old man with kind eyes, and showed him her photograph. He nodded slowly. Ah, the art teacher. He told me she'd left about 3 months ago. Moved somewhere far north, he thought, near the hills. My heart sank. Another dead end. Another ghost to chase. But then he added, before she left something behind. Box. For you, he led me to a dusty office and handed me a simple wooden crate. My name was written on top. Inside, nestled among dried leaves, were seashells, worn smooth paintbrushes, and a single, unfinished canvas. I pulled it out carefully. It was a painting of a man standing by the sea, facing the horizon. There was no face. Just a shadow, a silhouette against the vastness of the water and sky. A solitary figure, waiting. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that it was me. On the back of the canvas, another message in her familiar script. You taught me that love doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes it means freeing someone from who you used to be. I stood there for hours, holding the painting against the fading evening light. The anger that had been my constant companion for 5 years, the bitterness, the heartbreak, it all just dissolved. It washed away, leaving a strange and profound sense of peace in its place. I looked at the faceless man on the canvas, a shadow defined by the sea, and I finally understood. She wasn't running from me. She was running from a version of herself she could no longer be, and in leaving, she had set us both free. Maybe she didn't vanish after all. Maybe she just became part of the world in a way I couldn't reach, like the tide, like the wind, like everything beautiful that refuses to stay in one place. She wasn't a ghost haunting my past. She was a presence in the world, living, breathing, and finally being honest with herself. And in a way, that was a happier ending than any I could have imagined. That night, I went back to the pier. I found the little cafe where she used to sit and watch the waves, the one where she sold her jewelry to smiling tourists. I took her letter, the one that had started this journey, and I placed it carefully on an empty table, tucked into a menu. And underneath it, I wrote a small note of my own for anyone who might find it someday. She called me stranger once. Now I call her a memory that learned to breathe, as the waves whispered against the shore. A gentle, rhythmic shushing. I finally understood. Some people don't leave to forget you. They leave so you can remember them without pain. The sea took her name, but it left me her peace. Thank you so much for following this story to its conclusion. Your support for the first part was incredible, and it means the world to me that you came back for the end. If these stories resonate with you, please consider subscribing and hitting that like button. It helps more than you know. Until next time, take care. It had been 7 years since Nia disappeared. 7 years since that single devastating word, stranger, shattered everything I thought I knew about love, about us. My life since then has been a slow, careful reconstruction. I moved to the hills, found a small apartment, and built a world out of quiet routines. Mornings were for hiking through misty trails, and evenings were for books and the warm comfort of coffee. The sea, her letters, the canvases she painted on. They were all memories now, faded but still present, like gentle scars that remind you of what you've survived. I truly never expected to see her again. And maybe, in a way, I had finally made peace with that. Then, one early autumn day, everything changed. The mist was particularly thick, curling over the hills like smoke from a distant fire. The forest path smelled of damp earth and fallen leaves, a scent I'd come to associate with solitude and peace. I was walking a familiar trail, lost in my own thoughts, when I saw a figure ahead. Someone was crouched near a clearing, a canvas propped against an old oak tree. It was a woman with short, dark hair, sketching the very fog that surrounded us. My heart didn't just stop, felt like it seized in my chest, a sudden, painful jolt. It was her. It was Nia. Her eyes, those same eyes that once held galaxies, widened in surprise. But she didn't speak. She just watched me, frozen. I took a hesitant step forward, then another, my boots crunching softly on the path. I was terrified that if I moved too quickly, she would vanish again, dissolve into the mist like a phantom. Finally, her voice, a whisper carried on the cool air, broke the silence. "I didn't think you'd find me here." A soft, sad smile touched my lips. "I wasn't looking for you," I replied, the truth of it settling in my own soul. "I was looking for myself." She set her sketchbook down on a moss-covered rock, her movements slow and deliberate. "I ran," she began, her gaze fixed on the valley below. "I ran because I couldn't stay, but running didn't save me. It only made me realize. Some love isn't meant to be owned. You can't hold someone and call it peace." I listened, and I understood. The anger and confusion that had plagued me for years seemed to melt away, replaced by a profound, quiet empathy. I nodded. And yet, somehow, we survived separately. I've learned that letting go doesn't always mean losing. For the first time in all the years I'd known her, she smiled freely. It wasn't the playful smirk of our past, nor a smile tinged with regret. It was just a simple, human smile. "I wanted to come back," she said, her voice barely audible. "Not for us." But to finally say goodbye properly, we spent the rest of the afternoon walking through the hills, the silence between us as comfortable as our words. There were no promises, no demands, no desperate attempts to reclaim what was lost. We just talked. We shared the stories of our separate lives, the lessons we'd learned, the people we had become. It was a conversation 7 years in the making, and with every word, a weight I didn't even realize I was still carrying began to lift. As evening approached, the sky blushing with hues of orange and pink, she stopped at the edge of a cliff that overlooked the entire valley. "This is it," she said, turning to me. "This is where I leave my past behind." I reached out and took her hand. It was a brief touch, light as a feather, but it held the weight of a lifetime. It was a thank you. It was a final fond memory. Then, just as gently, she let go. Without another word, she turned and walked down the path, disappearing into the same fog from which she had emerged. I didn't follow. I didn't call her name. I just stood there, watching until she was gone. I stood on that cliff as the sun finally set behind the hills, spilling golden light across the valley like liquid warmth. And in that moment, for the first time in 7 long years, my chest felt completely empty. But it wasn't the emptiness of loss. It was the peaceful emptiness you feel when you finally release everything you've been holding on to so tightly. I realized then that some loves aren't meant to be neat stories with clear beginnings and tidy endings. They are lessons, silent, unshakable, and utterly unforgettable. Neha would always be a part of me, a chapter in my story, but she no longer had to be mine. Her memory was no longer a ghost that haunted me, but a guide that had led me back to myself. She called me stranger once. Now, I call her memory a teacher and myself, finally, free. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through all 3 parts of this story. Your support and engagement mean the world. If these stories resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more content like this. It truly helps more than you know. Until next time, take care.